All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Isani City Council to order. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Doing a roll call, we have all council members present. Do we have any public comment this evening? If you could, just state your name and address for the record there. I don't think so.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'll talk, let me know if you can hear me. Paul Burgley, 308 Whiskey Road, apartment 102. Yeah, I'm back in Isani. So, anyway, I heard you guys talked about this last month, and I was just gonna reiterate, I was planning on coming up this month anyway, and just talking about, I think that you guys done a good job appointing a lot of city councilmen. I'd like to see the mayor race be an election though. When I was on city council, the city attorney called all of us and said that nobody has more power than the other, even the mayor doesn't have more power. What he does is run the meetings and I forget the other things. But I think the mayor is the face of the city, and I think that people are approaching me and saying, you know, I don't know if they still know, I think I'm on city council, but they said we should be electing a mayor, and I somewhat agree with that. I was thinking that even before people started approaching me on that. And, you know, not that you guys haven't done a good job appointing people, but I think people want to elect their mayor. That's my feeling I get. And I think if anyone up here, any of you guys have any ambitions to run for mayor, I would totally support that. I mean, you know, George, you did good in the primary, and Luke, you did good in your first race, and Steve always does good with numbers. I think any of you, I don't remember your numbers, Jeff, but I remember all you guys did pretty well.
There wasn't any.
Yeah, there wasn't any.
Oh, did you just?
I was
get
appointed.
Oh, okay, that's right. So, I can't remember the whole, everybody's thing. But anyway, if I was a betting man, I would bet Jimmy's gonna win. This is a Republican-dominated area. I've supported Jimmy in every race, but his first one, I was the only one that voted against Jimmy. The first time around. Well, because I didn't know you, Jimmy. I realized that it didn't take long for me to realize I made a mistake in not voting for you. And I did vote for the other guy, Leroy. He's a personal friend of mine, and that's the only reason I voted for Leroy. But anyway, it doesn't matter for the mayoral race anyway. And so I would just encourage you, I know that it costs money, but I think that if it was up to me, I would say it's worth it if you divide it up over how many people would vote. I don't know what it comes out to, but I would think the average voter would want to vote for their mayor.
Roughly $3.50 per resident to do a special election.
Okay.
Yep.
I knew you guys talked about this last month. I just learned that today that you talked about it last month. I was coming up here anyway and talking, whether you talked about it or not, just to encourage you to say, I'm pro voting for the mayor. And I know it's up to you guys, but I'm going to encourage you to do that, so.
And I think, I mean, we're just speaking, you know, if something were to happen, we don't know if it's going to, so I mean, that's the first unknown, but the reason we were even discussing it at all was that I think everybody up here was in favor of a special election versus appointing. It was, the reason we discussed it last month was basically that if we wanted to change it to skip the primary, it needed to be discussed and it needed to be decided on, you know, then or, you know, later, which that came to about, when that was in the committee of meeting, but that came to three to two basically, with two of us wanting to skip the primary and the other three not, so
I
that's,
applaud your guys' wisdom. I would appreciate an election for the mayor.
yeah,
All right, thank you very much.
yeah. Thanks, Paul. Any other public comment this evening? All right, we'll move on to adopting the agenda here. If there's any modifications or,
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I do want to point out that I did pass out a supplementary memo for item K3. And then item number L2, which was previously a consent item, has been brought up to the business item, and that was for a resolution to approve quote and entering into contract with Sun Mechanical for plumbing and HVAC services.
I'll make a motion to approve with the changes mentioned.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Lundin, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. We have a few proclamations here. Let's see, we've got the month of October as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and I'll go ahead and just read that proclamation here, so. Whereas pregnancy and infant loss is such a common occurrence, one that is usually not recognized, and whereas many Isanti parents and families have suffered a miscarriage, a stillbirth, or a death of an infant during delivery or shortly after birth, and whereas this devastating tragedy often occurs suddenly without warning and as a result of miscarriage, stillbirth, preterm birth, sudden infant death syndrome, accident, or other causes or complications, and whereas Isanti wishes to acknowledge the profound grief experienced by families who suffer the death of a baby, and whereas Isanti wishes to acknowledge the existence of babies and infants that die far too young, whereas even the shortest lives are still valuable and the grief of those who mourn the loss of these lives should not be trivialized, and whereas the 15th day of October is recognized in parts of the United States and in many other jurisdictions around the world as a day of remembrance and awareness of pregnancy and infant loss, and whereas the tragedy of pregnancy and infant loss, which exacts a terrible emotional toll, may be preventable in some instances, and whereas increased awareness of the causes and impacts surrounding pregnancy and infant loss may lead to a greater understanding, support, and resources in communities across Isanti, and whereas a month of remembrance honors the lives of children taken far too soon and supports grieving parents, grandparents, siblings, and other family members whose lives are forever altered by the heartbreak of losing a child. And whereas those parents and families require support and understanding during their time of grief, and whereas promoting awareness of the challenges faced by those parents and families is a positive means of establishing support and understanding, and whereas recognizing Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Remembrance Month would enable the people of Isanti to consider how, as individuals and communities, they can meet the needs of bereaved mothers, fathers, and family members, and to work to prevent the causes of these deaths. And now, therefore, I, James Gordon, Mayor of the City of Isanti, do hereby proclaim October as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month in the City of Isanti and encourage parents, caregivers, and all residents to become educated in opportunities to prevent pregnancy and infant loss and support bereaved families when prevention is not possible. It's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so I'll read that proclamation here. Whereas breast cancer is the most common invasive cancer in women across every racial and ethnic group in Minnesota, and whereas nationally more than 200,000 women and an unknown number of men are living with metastatic breast cancer, a devastating stage of breast cancer that occurs when cancer spreads beyond the breast to other parts of the body, including the bones, lungs, liver, and brain. And whereas, due in part to a lack of awareness, men are generally diagnosed with breast cancer at a later stage than women, which affects prognosis and treatment, and whereas currently no cure exists for metastatic breast cancer, and many of those with metastatic breast cancer pursue treatment with the goal of extending the best quality of life possible, and whereas through research and advocacy, advances have been made in the fight against breast cancer, including an increased rate of early detection and a high 5-year relative survival of nearly 93% in Minnesota, and whereas the month of October is designated as Breast Cancer Awareness Month to promote education and awareness, as well as to honor those who have lost their lives to breast cancer and support those currently fighting it. Now, therefore, I, James Gordon, Mayor of Isanti, do hereby proclaim October 2024 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And it's also Manufacturing Month, so this will be our last proclamation of the evening here. Whereas the manufacturing industry is a critically important part of Minnesota's diverse economy, and whereas manufacturing contributed $57.2 billion to Minnesota's economy in 2023, representing 12% of the state's gross domestic product, and whereas manufactured exports brought $22.5 billion into the Minnesota economy in 2023, and whereas workers took home $25.7 billion in wages from Minnesota manufacturing jobs in 2023, the second largest total payroll among private sector industries, and whereas manufacturing in Minnesota pays an average annual wage of $79,000, which is 10% higher than the state's overall average private sector wage, and whereas manufacturing provides more than 325,800 highly skilled, well-paying jobs, which significantly contribute to Minnesota's high standard of living and economic vitality, and whereas there are roughly 25 manufacturing companies in Isani making a wide range of products that improve life, create solutions, and bring joy here in Isani throughout Minnesota and around the world. And whereas more than 350 people are employed in manufacturing jobs in Isani, now therefore I, James Gordon, Mayor of Isani, do hereby proclaim October as 2024 as Manufacturing Month. All right, looking to approve the city council meeting minutes. We have the meeting minutes from the 17th of September for Committee of the Whole, and we have the meeting minutes from the city council meeting that same evening on September 17th. Did I say 17th on the first one? Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. For announcements, we have our city offices closed on October 14th in observance of Columbus Day. We have our Committee of the Whole meeting on Tuesday, October 15th at 5 p.m., Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday, October 15th at 6 p.m., City Council on Tuesday the 15th at 7 p.m., and our Park and Rec Board meeting on Tuesday the 22nd at 6 p.m. Do we have any council committee reports?
I do have one brief one. The Dairy Queen here in town has done a couple fundraisers for the school district, and that's been great. They've donated quite a bit of money. I believe the first time it was around $2,800, and they had another event on September 26th. I haven't heard how much they gathered to donate to the schools, but I think it's great that a local business is giving back to the Isani schools. And then at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, the last meeting was about AI. I thought there was some interesting stuff there, specifically the chat GPT. And Steffi was there, and I wasn't sure if we did that as a city to use to write up, job descriptions and stuff like that, because I tried a couple little queries on there, and it worked pretty good for actually coming up with job descriptions. I wasn't sure if that was something we used, but I thought that was interesting.
We had fire district meeting here a couple weeks ago. They had some storm damage out on Station 3 which is surprising when you look at that house that was kitty corner from them. That ripped everything down, all those trees and everything, and there's the small amount of damage that was done to the station was pretty miracle, especially when that thing stands out like a sore thumb out there. Preliminary budget with them, it looks very promising. I don't want to get into detail on it until we actually set it, but looks very promising, a lot better than it normally is, so. Other than that, there really wasn't a lot else there.
All right. I think Jeff was in that building at Station 3 when the storm came through. You on your way home from work or something, and you had to stop off?
Stopped there, took shelter.
Yeah. Yeah,
Didn't know I was going to be in the middle of it.
yeah, but you're right, Steve, that house across the street just got, not the house, I guess, but the barn and the
barn
woods, and yeah, it was crazy. Any other council committee reports? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our first business item, K1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 245, peddlers, solicitors, and transient merchants and mobile food units.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So at the Committee of the Whole on August 20th, it was discussed to have a further discussion about Chapter 245 in reference specifically to the distance for the food service building and a restaurant, and how it's calculated for a food truck unit. This was further discussed with some recommendations from staff at the September 17th City Council meeting, or Committee of the Whole meeting, and those changes are before you. This ordinance has been posted for the required 10 days, and the language is as what was presented at that September 17th meeting, and I will read the following changes. This is in section 245-26 under locations. Starting with letter B, mobile food units cannot be located within 500 feet from the perimeter of any pre-approved festival, sporting event, or civic event unless license is issued for the mobile food unit to be part of the festival or event. C, mobile food units cannot be located within 200 feet of an entrance to a brick and mortar restaurant unless The license is issued in conjunction with, or the mobile food unit is operating pursuant to an exception for any pre-approved event, festival, sporting event, or civic event. Or 2, the brick and mortar restaurant is closed and not doing business during the hours of the mobile food unit's operation. For purposes of this provision, distances shall be measured from the primary entrance of the restaurant, and the primary entrance is a door along the street where the restaurant is physically addressed. For purposes of this provision, distances of a restaurant within a multi-tenant facility or strip mall will be measured from the primary entrance of the restaurant business. And then D, a copy of the written permission from any restaurant owner if the mobile food unit is requested to be located within 200 feet of a restaurant must be included with the license application.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? I was thinking to myself, and I hadn't thought about this before when we had talked about adding this or doing this, but 500 feet from a festival, so let's say you've got somebody that sets up like that Taco Taxi is set up, and then Nick and Drew's want to do some kind of a special event. You know, the intention of saying 500 feet is so that you don't have food trucks coming in and piggybacking on special events without being a part of the special event, right? But I could see that potentially creating an unwanted consequence that if there's something set up on more of a permanent basis that just happens to be there, well, then are they gonna have to move if either within 500 feet of a special event? You know what I mean?
Unless they get permission from the
event.
person putting on the special event, I mean,
Yeah, so the special event would have to allow them to be a mobile food unit where they're established if it's within the 500 feet.
Yeah, so that doesn't seem like what we're trying to accomplish, you know what I mean? I don't know, it probably would never come up, but the thought occurred to me that, well, boy, what if you were set up like that, then that would be different.
I think it's reasonable. I know the farmer's market, they had a food truck set up right across the street at the Minco. They eventually asked to come over to the market on Fridays, but in the future, it could be.
Oh, you're saying, like the mini donut stand that was across the street at the
Right.
gas station? Yeah.
Christie. I mean, they were okay with it, but maybe.
But he had been setting up there
in the future.
prior, I mean, yeah, right, so.
and we'll only know if someone calls and complains about it.
Well,
So, I
right,
mean,
but
Nick
I
and Drew's,
mean-
if they're gonna have a private event, not to put words in their mouth, but they're probably not gonna call and complain about a truck
No.
that's been sitting there.
No, but I mean-
yeah, it is a,
You're leaving the possibility open that situation could happen, you know what I mean?
would that be something that we would all discuss as, when, a special event permit comes in? That's something that we'd all have to discuss, correct?
Well, not necessarily, I guess.
Right,
We-
that special event permit is stating that they don't need to get a mobile food unit license because they will be part of the event as long as the event holder is carrying the liability for them. And then it's prohibiting other people, as the mayor stated, to piggyback on that, where, there are events that make money off of vendors to help sustain their event, so it's to prohibit that from happening unless they're a part of it.
I mean, in theory, we could have someone setting up on rodeo days just shy of the rodeo grounds, and we don't want that either, I wouldn't think. I mean, I believe in free market, but I think 500 feet's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it could be cleaned up but I mean, you get what I'm saying, is that,
Yeah.
but how do you can't really define that. Like, okay, if the mini donut guy goes to the gas station on a somewhat regular basis, and it just happens that that's a day that he's gonna be there anyway, then, you know what I'm saying? And that's, like, if it is a Friday right now, then he wouldn't be allowed to go to that gas station on a Friday when the farmer's market is going technically then, right?
Well, let me say this, a lot of businesses, what they do is, it would be more on the business owner, the gas station, because I've found out they like to lease out to these
Yeah.
food trucks, so.
Yeah.
I don't think it would go against a food truck as much as a business.
Another thing to consider, or just perspective, is not every event has to get a special event permit. So let's say, for example, the VFW had an event that was fully contained, and it was a full-out festival, but they are not overflowing out to the public right-of-way. They do not need to get a special event permit. So if they did not want to carry the liability for their food trucks, any and all food trucks could go there. They don't have an approved special event permit. So not all events that businesses put on would be a special event.
And you also have to think, I mean, if the residents speak by making their purchase at the mini donut shop that's set up across the street, that means the residents want it. So, I mean, you kind of let the market speak on that, and I don't know, it's a tough one.
That's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
maybe just, I could see it creating more problems than it actually, I mean, not many people are gonna go and, but, I mean, it happens at the state fair, you see when you're parking and stuff, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of people set up and, you know, outside the fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
We did have it at one of our city events.
Did we?
did have vendors that paid to have a vendor spot at one of our city events
Mm-hmm.
that had the fireworks. And we did have a vendor set up farther away, but within Bluebird Park, that was not a paying vendor. Not saying that we created this for that
Mm-hmm.
example, but that does happen.
But I also think if they were setting up in Bluebird Park, they should have had the city's permission. That'd have been, to me, it would have been a red flag to start with. They shouldn't have been setting up a vendor's truck in one of our city parks, period, without city's permission. Plain and simple.
We
So-
did make them move, and then they moved to the right-of-way.
So then they
So,
left
it
Bluebird
was-
Park and went out on Isani Parkway?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess you could just make it a shorter distance too, but, I mean, maybe make it 200 feet, just like the restaurants.
I have no problem with that.
200 feet isn't really much, but. I don't know, what do you guys think? Maybe it's nothing to even be worried about, but I just, when I was reading it, I was thinking, yeah, what about that? So,
Do we have to repost it?
Yes, we would have to repost it and bring it back to another council meeting.
We could just keep it the way it is, and if that issue arises in the future, we can readdress it then, since we would have to redo it anyway. I don't see I don't see an issue with it.
I'll clarify that we do have to repost it for the 10 days, so we would have to post notice. But if we go with this and then change it later, we do pay for a codifier to codify our code. So I would recommend that if you think you might want to change it based off another scenario, that we would just wait and revise it when you,
I think you just leave it as it is. It's at 500
Agree
feet.
with the number.
Just leave it the way it is. I don't think, it just clarifies more things. That's all.
And it would require the person that has the special event to make a complaint, correct? So if Nick and Drew say is having an event and they don't care about the taco truck, we're never gonna hear about it because they don't care. So it's,
And I don't think people are gonna go to Nick and Drew's because they're a special event. He might get a few stragglers, but
yeah, right.
I honestly, I don't think that's, but it does concern me with when we have an event set up and you got a truck parking in our parks.
Right.
That's an X-nay. That
Yeah,
should never be allowed.
So is that in city ordinance now that they can't park in our parks? Or is that something that we should add to this?
well, that, it is in there that they have to be part of a special event permit, but then they can park in the right of way, but not in the park parking lot.
You get on that parkway, there ain't a lot of room to get by cars on that thing to start with. They shouldn't be allowed to put it on that right away on that street. That's pretty narrow. Anyway. And I think that would be a
I think
parking
they
issue.
were also asked to move from there, so,
What's that?
they were asked to move again. So, just.
I mean,
one
they're just trying to ride
scenario.
on a free ride, I get that, but, you know, they could have paid to have a vending spot sitting there, and they probably would have made their money anyway. Instead of moving back and forth, that was a lot of screwing around to do that, personally. I mean, that's not like a 5-minute deal, just throw on the hitch and drive, you gotta secure everything to move it. I think just leave it the way it is, leave it to 500 and be done with it.
Okay,
And if there's an issue, then I guess we'll have to address that issue as it comes.
I could be persuaded either way on it.
yeah. It's probably, like I said, it's probably not that big a deal, but it's I could just see a situation where it becomes a problem, you know what I mean? But only if somebody complains,
Right.
you know? And the odds are, if it's somebody that's set up on a regular basis, probably not gonna get complained about.
'Cause you already know they're
already
gonna be
You
there.
know they're gonna be there, yeah. So, but it does give us the ability if, yeah, all right, I could be talked into that, yeah.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Moving on to K2, the resolution to approve a conditional use permit and variance for St. Elizabeth and Seton Catholic Church.
Evening, Mayor and Council. St. Elizabeth and Seton Catholic Church submitted a conditional use permit and a variance request for a dynamic sign to replace their existing sign at the corner of Heritage Boulevard and Whiskey Road. The church is zoned R1 Single Family Residential and therefore requires a conditional use permit for a dynamic sign as is required in all zoning districts, but a variance is also required for the size of their sign. This did go to the Planning Commission at the previous meeting on September 17th and was recommended for approval. The findings of fact and conclusion are included in the packet if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Third.
I have a motion to approve from Councilman Lundin, and I have a second from Councilman Merrill, I think. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Moving on to K3, the resolution to consider purchasing 2 shade structures at Rum River Meadows Park.
Good evening again. At the September 24th Parks and Recreation Board meeting, the board had a discussion regarding shade options for Rum River Meadows Park. This was also discussed at the August meeting as well, requesting more information. They are requesting to purchase 2 single-post pyramid cantilever shade structures that are 10 feet long by 10 feet wide and 8 feet tall, with an in-ground post. The city currently has a shade structure that resembles this at the Isani Community Garden, which I believe was purchased about 10 years ago in 2014, correct? I think that's what we said the other day. And looks like new. I actually have a picture of that, if you would like to have it.
Luke, you didn't specify what size posts those were.
4x4, 16 foot.
I'd go at least with a 5x5.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little more money, but
I was just doing a
Yeah, this
rough,
is a much better,
it's much better value, so
I mean,
if
how
I,
many times could you buy this again and just replace it?
Yeah.
Versus,
so I did the math on this, you know, I looked at these shades and they seem nice and all, but if, the fact the Public Works still has to install them, and they're, you know, $6,000 a piece, you go on Amazon, you can get a shade that's actually bigger for $57. And I know a lot of people use them to, you know, shade their car. I think they probably look less obtrusive than these things do. So then I just did the rough math on 4x4, Green Treat 16 foot, they're roughly $40 each. You need 4 of them, and then you need a screw eye for each post, so that's roughly $20. Now you could go 5x5 or 6x6, and you're talking, you know, an extra $80. So you'd have a total cost of approximately, let's just round up to $300 per shade versus that $6,000 per shade that we were quoted. Now I've seen a lot of these, they last roughly 5 years sitting outside. So even if you replace it every 5 years for $60, that's, you know, kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, there's probably a higher chance of it getting damaged in storms, but for $60, you're not really in anything, so.
yeah.
That's why I brought this up, because I think more homeowners would lean towards this more cost-effective approach, and I think that's how we should govern our city.
Yeah, well, I mean, and once you have the posts there, I mean, all you're gonna really change is the actual shade, the
Right.
canopy. Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, we're talking $12,000 for,
Something you can do for $300.
I'd
It's,
say I'm not opposed to giving it a shot and see what it's like.
yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
I'm sure this is nice, and I'm sure it will last longer, but like you said, I mean, how many times can you replace it for? so.
Yeah, you could replace it, let's see, what's the math on that, about 100 times?
The only difference is there's one post versus 3 more that somebody
Right.
run
Right.
into.
I was going
Right.
to say, the one thing we need to consider is the size of the shade area might need to be larger.
I was gonna,
Accessibility then, so that.
I think we should do
wheelchair
larger.
access To the area and shade.
A 10 by 30, so this one here for 56.99 is 10 by 13. I personally don't think that's big enough. I think the 13 by 19 and a half would be better, and that's only 99 bucks. So you have almost twice the shade, you know, so I
I'm not
guess,
opposed to
Well,
it.
and the one that we were looking at for the.
It's 10 by
10
10.
by 10, yeah.
but it has one post, so
Yeah,
it's,
so
well,
it's easier to access
Yeah,
underneath with the
right,
wheelchair.
yeah, no,
do those come down in the winter, the shades, or do they stay up on the existing one?
The existing one stays up year-round.
Okay.
We have discussed the potential of taking it down, but it's held up really well
Okay,
and hasn't had much fading or anything, so we just leaned on leaving it up.
okay, so one con to these is you'd have to take them down in the winter.
These you would do, because that one's tapered, so the snow load will come off, where the snow is just gonna sag that.
Right,
But if you think about it, in the parks, people aren't really going in the shaded areas in the parks in the wintertime.
and they like the sun in the winter usually, so.
They'd have to come down, but like I said, I'm not opposed to giving that a shot.
And would we want to do blue because it's the city color, or green because it's more natural? Is there a preference
Can
on that?
we-
but then you're gonna have 4 posts sitting in there in the wintertime, I suppose, that kinda look funny, but.
I think-
Paint orange.
They're pretty common. A lot of people I see installing these over their driveways.
Yeah.
So I think people just come to expect it.
Could staff choose according to the color of the playground structures
Sure.
and fading?
I would like to see the location of these moved. I hope the location you have on the map isn't the set location. For one, the one is too close to the volleyball net, and I can see it getting hammered a lot. And I think we should move them both out to the front. That would be my opinion. So one on the right, one on the left.
The park board did recommend putting them in these locations. They did think it would be nice to use if you were playing volleyball, so that it was accessible for the volleyball players and maybe would encourage more use over there because it is so sunny and there's no shade. And
I don't-
then they were chosen to be on the, east and south sides instead of, like, for sure, they didn't want it to be on the north side of the park for shading
Sure.
purposes.
That makes sense, but then we should move it as maybe even a tad onto the playground. I'm not sure what the structure is, to the east of it, but maybe have it overlap the playground just a tad, part of it, or get it as close to the playground as possible and away from the net.
And we could move it to the south, still to be next to the volleyball court, I guess.
Sure.
And just, there's more space there to the front of the playground, so it's closer to the other one, but still
Sure, at least out of the
in between.
line of fire.
That's what I mean.
And I know last month we had talked
I
about
never
a
see anybody else playing.
potential shade structure for the
You had-
new amenities at Bluebird Park, and it was roughly 30,000.
Oh,
Could we consider something like this for that as well, if the cost is, you know, 300 to 400 bucks?
I was just gonna say, yeah, where else do you want shade structures?
It just seems so, I mean, it's
Those
like,
say that shade structure was for over the playground equipment.
yeah, I mean, this could be over, they have all sorts of different
and that
sizes
was,
of these.
I believe 40 by, that was very large and
Okay.
very tall.
But you could do 2 of them. I've seen a lot of people where they have 2 of them next to each other. So you
I
have,
believe
them-
I mean, it's like 18 to 20 feet tall, so.
oh, okay,
Yeah, because it has to go over the entire playground structure.
okay.
So, there were 2 shade structures added, but we've already moved forward with the purchase.
Right.
Included with that, ones that are cantilevered like this one. I believe 2 or 3 within that original.
Oh, there was 2 within that?
On the outside exterior of that play area.
Okay. Guess I
Those
didn't
were-
think we voted on that.
Yeah, we did. There was some other amenities they wanted to add, and those are the ones we
Okay.
eliminated.
Got it. Well, I voted no on it either way, so.
I'd
Okay.
like to see a more permanent solution to this too. I'd really like to see a couple trees going here. I mean, that park's gonna be around hopefully for another 50 years. I'm sure we'll upgrade the equipment between now and then, but, if we're gonna invest,
You'd be surprised. I listen to it till 10:30 almost every night.
but
They're in there.
we need some trees, and we also need trees over by
We did plant 2 new trees in this park this year.
Yes, there is 2 trees
We
in
have
there.
money in our parks budget annually, I believe roughly $6,000 for new trees every year. So we've been adding them to Bluebird as well as this park
Okay.
and all the parks where we think there's
But you get,
some
another thing you
space for
gotta
them.
realize
So
on
we're
that thing,
chipping away at
there's 3
these
lots
parks
at
without
that
shade.
park. We bought lots on both sides of that park.
So I,
Big area there. It's a nice area.
today, before this council meeting, I was actually talking to an apple, tree farmer, and I was thinking that'd be kind of fun for us to have apple trees in our parks. I don't know if that's is that against the
Not real great
rules?
for shade though, really.
Well, no, but
But I
it's,
suppose you
it's-
could trim them up and, I don't know.
It's not
It's-
a great park tree since it's hard to mow after you have apples. We'd have to put a lot of wood chips underneath them as well as
And you gotta go clean
bees.
up the apples, and you're gonna have bees, and you're just.
but it's
gonna-
nature, I mean, it's a park.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was something that we'd ever considered.
You get somebody, get a kid out there that is allergic to bees, and you give
Yeah.
a reason for bees to be there, you'd be surprised how many, I've been stung so many times with apple trees in the yard because of it.
And they're not always the bees you want either.
I guess I mean, I have 2 apple trees and I've never gotten stung, and it's usually just honeybees, but I don't know. And we have a lot of apples down, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting idea because kids like apples. I mean,
That's
everybody,
an interesting idea.
yeah.
I'd be a dead set against apple
Okay.
trees or fruit trees in a park. You're just gonna ask for trouble.
Could you put that over by the community gardens? Try it.
Maybe draw some bees in, pollinators.
All right, so shade structures, what are you guys thinking here? Want to go do 2 of the larger 13 by 19 and a half and,
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yep.
It's 1/10 or 1/20th of the price,
Okay.
so.
yeah.
But I do recommend to go with 6x6
Yeah,
posts.
I don't have any problem with that. I was just doing a real quick, you
And I
know.
think the eye bolts should not just be legged into them. I think they should be drilled through.
Through
with a
holes?
Bolt and washer, nut and washer and lock nut
Mm-hmm.
on it, so that they can pivot, because if they, it just might make it last longer.
Yep.
That would
So-
be my suggestion.
Should we give them an amount not to spend over? I mean, or just say it is what it
Let's
is?
just go with these and be done with it.
Okay,
A motion to approve with Luke's shades with 6x6 posts and going to the 13 by 19 and a half.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Nice job on that, Luke.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. So moving on to K4, consider recommendation from Parks and Recreation Board for naming Fairway Greens North Park.
as you are aware, we've been discussing the parkland that was dedicated from Fairway Greens North development. And officially, it does not have a name. We call it Fairway Greens North Park because that's the development it's in, but we do need to discuss having an official name. Fairway Greens North Park is a very big mouthful, so not that it's not the right name, but just considering that. So we really want to know we do have a naming policy for naming parks and park features, and that is included within the packet. And it really does give us a good step outline for asking for citizen input or hosting a contest. And then it will also have to be filtered through the policy, which does require it to be named according to any of the natural features or the location of the park, so within the city. I guess we'd like to know what you would advise moving forward and what you'd like to see for the naming of this park.
I like the idea of having a contest, have somebody name it.
Me too.
As long as it
Facebook
fits
survey?
within the city's standards, I mean, we all have to be concerned with naming it, but I think naming it, having a contest for naming it and maybe give a gift certificate to something or whatever for it or something.
Maybe they could cut the ribbon.
Yep.
That'd be cool. I think it might be a good time for a Facebook poll or something like that. I know I've been talking about it, and I don't know if that's where you're gonna get the most interaction, I think, is Facebook, but
Are we thinking we would want to request names from the public and have a deadline, and then from there, depending on how many we have, pick the top 4 or 5, and then have have a survey from those names. Is that what you?
That'd be an ideal way of doing it.
Sounds good to
Could
me.
could we make a post on Facebook saying that they can enter their entry into the comment section, so it's easy for people to participate? Like, say we make a post on Facebook and all they have to do is comment what they think the name should be, and then it's entered in, because then you're gonna get people that are willing to do it. It's easy to type 2 words and hit send versus having to fill out a whole.
The only hard issue with that is then it's hard to define a winner. I
Well,
guess.
no, we'd have to choose from it or do like a poll
But a
from.
lot of people could potentially say, no, I want this name, yeah, that name. Yeah, and then they will put the same name in, so then how do we pick who?
No, I'm saying to just gather names to begin with. So say if you have 50 people that comment, well, now you have 50 names, and you might be, there's some that are just gonna automatically not be in. And then you have, say, 15 that make it past that cut, and then you can choose, or we can choose, or the people can choose in a poll which one is the best, because I don't know how you'd gather names otherwise.
We could just create a form that they could link to from Facebook where they just log in, like we did with our last survey, and just have them enter their name so we know their information. So then we could choose a winner of the contest. From Facebook, it'll be hard to choose a winner unless we're only gonna pick the first person who says it, who could potentially, the next so that's what I'm just thinking.
Okay.
If somebody
like
says
that
the same
approach.
name, it
Yeah.
just might be easier to gather the right information.
Do you think we'll get enough participation if we do it that way?
We had quite a good response, actually, from our surveys, so I think we'll be,
Okay.
Mayor and Council, we've done other naming contests for other park amenities. Legacy Park is a great example. The schools chose. And so it was specifically reached out to some different classes, pick the names of the different outlook areas. And that was successfully done, and the school really enjoyed the collaboration. I can't remember exactly what grade it was, but maybe 4th grade or something. But that was really well. It was a great community get-together, because obviously the kids in town are doing it, and they got to go out there and be present when we were putting signs up. So I think that was a great opportunity as well. So we can reach out to the schools to see if they want to do something, as well as open it up to the public.
Like both ideas.
Yeah, I think that's the direction we should go.
How do you decide between a school entry and a public entry, though?
Don't matter. It's gonna be a name.
Okay.
I think that the teachers could come up with something creative, and within their classroom, they could pick one name, and the teacher can put that name in there. So
Sure.
then they'd all get recognition for it, but it's tied to that teacher's name. So I think there's definitely a way to make that possible.
Okay.
Okay. I think,
Make a motion to do that.
Second.
Need a motion for that or no? I don't see any resolution here or anything, so.
we don't have a resolution, but we'll still take action
Okay,
for it.
all right. All right, I have a motion to create a contest for naming the Fairway Greens North Park from Councilman Lundin, and I think I had a second from Councilman Merrill there. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Oh, let's see. K5, resolution to award the quote and entering into contract with Sun Mechanical for plumbing and HVAC services.
So the city has a contract currently with this vendor, Sun Mechanical, and that is for plumbing services. The contract is nearing an end. It is expiring at the end of November. So staff did put out an RFP to solicit proposals from qualified contractors to supply these services to the city. We only received one proposal, and that proposal was from Sun Mechanical. The information is provided within the packet for the cost for each of the services, the rates during business hours, outside business hours, and they also have agreed to, again, maintain the certification to maintain for our RPZs that need to be tested every 5 years, and also other backflow preventers as necessary.
They need to be tested every year and rebuilt every 5.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Just to clarify that, because if he's only coming once every 5 years to test them,
To
that's
be
wrong.
rebuilt, yes.
I just wanted to clarify that.
So I asked to bring this out of the consent agenda because I just think that a lot of these companies are overcharging, especially for the apprentice hourly rate. Steve, you might have a different opinion on it, but
I don't
130.
disagree with apprenticeship hour.
Yeah, that's
but
too high.
But that's what it's going to be.
Unless you say
Most
no.
companies bill out the same rate for an apprentice as they do a foreman or journeyman. They're gonna bill it out straight across that rate. I'm gonna be honest with you, that's pretty cheap.
I disagree. I mean.
I don't.
Yeah.
You call somebody to come out to your house and it's $500 just for them to show up, that's cheap.
Yeah, I mean,
And you got nobody else throwing their name in there?
yeah.
That's because our RFP process is too complicated for contractors to even be interested in
If
working
you're a
with us.
contractor gonna do things with cities or any municipality or government, state, whatever, that RFP is no different than it is doing a commercial job somewhere. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
That's not what contractors are telling me about it,
The
so.
contractors that you're dealing with don't deal with these other ones. Let me tell you something. I've dealt with a lot of commercial projects. It's not that difficult, trust me. It's not. When you gotta spend months reading a book on your, now it's slipping my mind, but when you bid a project, you have certain guidelines that you have to follow. In doing plumbing, I have to look in the building section to make sure none of my plumbing is carved in there, and that happens. So let me tell you something, it is not, you're dealing with somebody that's just doing with something with a homeowner or a quick service, that's nothing. This is nothing compared to anything different. RFP process is no different than what it would be for any other job that you do anywhere else.
Okay, well, every contractor that I send any of this stuff to, they say our process is clunky, so, I mean, I've said that since I got on here.
I totally understand when
Yeah.
they're saying that.
And it's costing
but-
us more money.
No, it doesn't.
It does, because the people that are gonna give us reasonable prices don't even wanna deal with all the BS of.
Most people
all
are
of
gonna
this.
charge more than 10%.
I saw the
per project.
markup is good,
And
that's not much.
But that's part of our
Yeah.
requirement. I used to do it when I had my own business. It isn't that bad. It is not that bad. It's not as bad as you think to lead it out to be. If you don't wanna take the time to go through it, that's your problem. If you want the business, then you need to do it. If you don't wanna do it, I'm sorry. How bad do you wanna do the work? But I'm gonna tell you right now, most companies don't charge less for an apprentice as they do a normal journeyman. Most companies will not.
And I don't think that the hourly rate is all that bad, actually. I mean,
No.
these guys, I mean, they charge a lot. I mean, and it's only gotten worse over the last 3 years.
Yeah, and it's time for us to say no more. I mean, people are
Yeah,
sick
but you've
of
only
paying
got-
this stuff in their taxes.
But
and that's our whole
I don't
point of
think they're
being here.
unreasonable is my point.
I do think they're
I mean,
unreasonable. An apprentice is paid, what, 40 to 50 bucks an hour tops, and you got almost $100 markup an hour there, you know?
But,
And I don't think it's
but
reasonable for
you
people
have
to
to
be paying
pay
that.
for workman's
I know,
comp.
I know,
You have to
Steve.
pay for an insurance.
Yep.
There is more money, and then plus they have to cover all their social security.
I know.
Just because you see that, that isn't, there's more involved in it,
Yeah, there's
trust me.
too much government tax involved with it, and.
And you're not gonna
You're
change
feeding
that.
onto this tax burden with these businesses and these
You're not going
people.
to change that.
Is this a one-year contract?
This is a 3-year contract.
They're locking
Because
that
it
number
is-
in for 3 years.
We have, and it does have the ability, because it is a professional service, to be extended annually as thought fit by the council, and that would be put onto a January resolution when we do our other contracts. But we do find that that is in the best interest of the city to have the cost weighed out, and get these guaranteed prices instead of every year we see inflators. And we have done some contracts in the past that weren't out 3 years. We've also done some that are 5, which are also more challenging to get, but it is nice to know exactly what you're paying.
But you gotta realize, this is just for servicing. When they go to replace furnaces and ACs and everything else, they have just as much right to bid it as anybody else does. Those projects get billed out. This is if Josie said, all of a sudden toilet's flooding over, you gotta call somebody. That's what they do. That's what their job title is. But when it's a bid out job process to replace furnaces and ACs and everything else, that's a different story.
For single units, we have gone with our contracted, we do the same with electrical as well. But for big projects that are part of a project, we do bid that out.
Sure.
Or get quotes.
I think Sun Mechanical they're a good company. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilman Heeman and a second from Councilman Lundin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Hi,
Yeah.
can we have some discussion on this? Is it possible that we go out for another bid? Because I don't like the fact we're accepting a bid without any competition on it. That defeats the whole point of an RFP. And if we're just accepting this without any competition, I mean, I don't think that's right for us.
We had it
So,
open, how long, I mean, first of all, the motion carries 4-1. How long do we have this open for the bid process? I mean,
So we had posted it, public notice on August 8th. That did go into the paper on August 15th, and we accepted proposals until September 16th. So a month from when it went into the paper, 5 weeks from when it was posted on our website.
yeah, that's plenty of time. I mean,
I guess I would like to see more
and trust
competition
me,
and stuff,
this
yeah.
pricing is not, it's very, very reasonable, so. I mean, I hire plumbers for all sorts of stuff, and it's reasonable. So. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have, I did want to mention the thank you to Little Sprouts Daycare, or Child Care Center for the donation to Illuminate Isani. And then Julia, looks, she must have, I know she had some ambitions at the DNR, I think, or something like that, but I don't know if that's where she's heading, but I hate to see her go, so she's done a great job, and we appreciate all of her help since she's been here, so. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Merrill, and I think I had a second from Councilman Lundin first.
He actually said it first.
Councilman Holmgren first. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0, and then we are gonna go into a closed session. And that'll be for the city administrator's annual performance review pursuant to Minnesota statutes 13D.05 subdivision 3A.